Boker Tov, good morning on this fine Sunday morning, which is the Hebrew date on this day is Yud Daled Iyar, the 14th day of Iyar, and I'll explain in a moment the significance of that. But before we move on, or before we continue with the class, we want to offer our deep condolences, prayers for strength and comfort to the shooting victims of the horrible act of evil and tragedy in Buffalo, New York. So senseless, so evil, and at this point, without discussing why and what and response, just our prayers and support to the families who have been so tragically and deeply affected. May Hashem, may God send them comfort. May they be comforted in amongst all those who have lost loved ones. May God send them strength, and I'm sure all of us listening over here join in prayers and not even beginning to make sense of such a senseless and horrible tragedy. So today's topic, which is it too late? Are you always late? I want to begin with saying a bracha, with a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bidvaro. You know, it's a little bit difficult to transition from such an opening, and in some ways we shouldn't transition. But nevertheless, we're going to move on. We're going to go to our class, and in doing so, I want to dedicate today's class to the merit of those souls who were tragically gunned down yesterday. I did not get a chance to see names and so on, but we will be dedicating the class to them and to the others who have been injured, and to their families. So Pesach Sheni. Today is a lesser known biblical holiday, which is called Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is the second Passover. Now let me explain. You know, let me ask you an honest question. Have you ever, are you an on-time type of person, or are you a late type of person? Do you usually show up on time? If you show up on time to things, give us a thumbs up. And if you're one who shows up late, I mean, let's be honest. Have you ever missed a flight? Give us your opinion. Have you ever missed a flight? Are you late? You usually miss your train. Are you the one that the spouse has to wait and always comes late to an appointment because you're not ready? Or are you the one always waiting for your spouse to be ready? Who are you? Which one are you? So, Pesach Sheni, let me tell you the story behind Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni, for those who speak Hebrew, means the second Pesach. Now, what's the story behind this second Pesach? Second Pesach is a biblical holiday which does not really apply today, as I will elaborate and explain. Pesach Sheni, the Torah tells us that. Let me shut this off. These noises in the background here. Sorry for this. Let me just turn down the volume over here on the computer. Here we go. Let's just turn down the volume where it's down. So I hope that We shouldn't be hearing these sounds. Okay, so Pesach Sheni, this is the story. The story is, the Torah tells us in Numbers that Vayhi Anoshim Ashahayu Tmeim Lenefesh Adam. There were people who could not make it for the first celebration of Passover. After the Jews left Egypt, and there was the holiday in Hebrew is called Pesach. One of the reasons it's called Pesach is because of the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, the Paschal sacrifice, which is brought in the Holy Temple. Every single year, when the Beis Hamikdash, when the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem, and so too when the Jews were in the desert, the year after they left, the year that they left the Pesach, and the year after that, they went ahead and they bought the Pesach, the Paschal lamb, the sacrifice of Pesach, which then was eaten at night. This is part of why we have a Seder. The Seder, the famous Pesach Seder that we do on Pesach, is to commemorate. And then we have the Kaira, which all is part of the memory and commemorating that which we did at the days of the temple. We had the Paschal Lamb. We would get together, as the Torah, the Bible clearly details all the laws and regulations and the rules that you have to do in order to celebrate Pesach with the Paschal Lamb that was sacrificed. Now, the Torah tells us that then there were some people who, for whatever reason, were tamei. They were ritually impure because they were involved. They came in contact with a corpse, with a dead body, with a deceased person. And as a result, they could not participate in the Korban Pesach, in the Paschal Lamb, because you have to be ritually pure. And the Torah relates that these people came to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, and they said the known words, which is Lama Nigora. Why should we lose out? Why should we miss out from the ability to be part of the Pesach ritual and celebration and so on? And and as I said, it is because they were in contact with impurity. And there are two opinions of what was the reason, what was the impurity that they came in touch with. One opinion is that this was Mishael and Elzaphan, who were the siblings of Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, the sons of, all four of them were the sons of Aharon, the high priest. And as we read in the Torah, that Nadav and Avihu entered the Holy Temple without at a time when they weren't supposed to, and God took their lives, and they died, and Mishael and Elzaphan went ahead and they took care of their brothers, and therefore they were impure. Another opinion is that these were people who were involved in carrying the Aron, in carrying the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, one of the 12 tribes, which, as we read in the Bible, the Jews, when they left the Exodus, took the Yosef with them throughout the journey in the desert until they were able to bury him in the Holy Land in Israel, and therefore they were tamei. And they requested from Moshe and said, we want to be part of the Paschal Lamb. Okay, this is the story. Moshe responds, and he says to them that, let me hear what God has to say about this. And he turns to God, and God says to him, yes, we will make a second Pesach. A month after the first Pesach, at least the first, meaning the 14th, when the Paschal Lamb is brought, we will make a second Pesach to make up, so that people, throughout the time the temple stood, if people could not make it to the first Pesach, they could go ahead and make it to the second Pesach. And commentaries ask, and ethicists and so on ask the question, what is it over here that's so special that all of a sudden God gives them a second holiday? We do not find a second Sukkot when we sit in the Sukkah. We do not find a second Shavuot when we receive the Torah. We do not find a second Rosh Hashanah. We do not find a second Yom Kippur. And various answers are given on a sort of legal approach or basis. With the answer that is given is that Sukkot. There's the main mitzvah of Sukkot is sitting in the sukkah or taking a lulav and an esrog, and for that, it is not complicated. It's not something that is complicated, and there's not a problem of doing so in a state of impurity. And so too with regards to Shavuos, only Pesach, which is about the Paschal Lamb. So over here, this is sort of more complicated, and it has to be done with ritual purity. So therefore, this came about as a Pesach, as a second Passover. I mean, that's on a little bit on a legal level, on a what we call on a pshat, on a more basic, simple, straightforward level. On a deeper level, of course, over here the Torah is teaching us how much, because this is the only mitzvah that came about not because it was instructed from above, like all other mitzvot, all other commandments, where God says, okay, you should keep kosher, you should keep the Shabbat, etc. This is a mitzvah which came about from a cry and a yearning from the person below, as opposed as something instructed by the teacher from God above. And this was very dear and very cherished by God Almighty. The fact that there was such a yearning and a sense of missing, this opened up sort of new channels from God Almighty, from above, and he responded. He says, yes, I'm giving you a Paschal Lamb. There are other explanations. I mean, the Rebbe also adds over there, and he says, because Pesach represents the birth of our nation, and this is not, you could miss other things. You could miss, you could miss the train. You could miss even you could miss certain other elements of Judaism, but Pesach, which represents the birth of a people. If you're not born, if you miss being born, you're just not there. So therefore, God goes ahead and says, when it comes to something so vital as being born, and every single year again, Passover represents the fact that we are being born, so that within creation, within our birth, God gave us a second chance, highlighting how second chances are so important, as we will elaborate a little bit more as the class moves on. But again, one of the main reasons that it happens over here is because it was initiated from a broken heart and yearning from below. I want to connect that to a story, because this week is also Lag BaOmer. Many of you are more familiar with Lag BaOmer than you might be of Pesach Sheni. Now, Pesach Sheni, as mentioned, the second Passover. Today, there's no biblical celebration because the temple is destroyed. We don't have the Paschal Lamb, etc. However, it is customary that we eat matzah on this day as a remembrance to Pesach Sheni. And we eat matzah, we eat kosher for Passover matzah if possible. It's not Passover in the sense that you're not allowed to eat bread. You could eat bread. In fact, it's the only time you could have bread, and you could have matzah at the same time, and you could have chametz, etc. But it is customary to have some matzah on this day. So go ahead, don't forget to wash and say the blessing on Latilat Yadayim, and say the blessing Hamotzi, and make sure to have some matzah. Now, this week is also Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer means the 33rd day of the Omer. And we're not going to focus that much on Lag BaOmer, but only as it connects to our discussion here about Pesach Sheni. Lag BaOmer is the day that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the famed Tana, the famed Talmudic rabbi and author of the Zohar. On this day, Lag BaOmer, is when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, and he instructed and he requested that it should be a day of celebration. And throughout the world, Lag BaOmer is celebrated. Here in Coral Springs, we will have a community outing at the Betty Stradling or the Meadows Park, and all are welcome to join. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, there's a story that highlights this point about how there's a greater and special response that comes from God from above when it is initiated from us below. Let me share a story, L'chaim, that happened with the Rashbi with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So there was a couple that came to the Rashbi, to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and they told Reb Shimon Bar Yochai that they are married for 10 years and they were not blessed with children. There's no greater blessing that one can have than to have a child. There's no greater purpose in one's life, it's fulfillment, as it is the first mitzvah in the Torah. God says to Adam and Eve, Pru Urvu. He gives them a blessing and a commandment. You should be fruitful and to multiply. There's no greater mitzvah, no greater achievement, greater reward in life, greater satisfaction in life, etc. They came to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and they told Reb Shimon Bar Yochai that they are married for 10 years and they were not blessed with children. Some of you might know this law. We find this already by Abraham and Sarah, that if you are married for 10 years and you do not have children, then you can get divorced and each marry someone else and hopefully be blessed with children through the second marriage. So they came to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. They asked him, we're married for 10 years. Is it okay that we get divorced? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said to them the following. The Rashbi, known by the acronym Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So he told them the following. He says, yeah, go ahead. I understand. You're married for 10 years. You guys want to get divorced. You're coming to me for my guidance here. This is what I would recommend that you do. Just like when you got married with a great party. You got married with great fanfare. You made a feast. You invited friends. So why don't you do the same? Go ahead, make a party in celebration of the culmination, of the conclusion of your marriage. Okay, Rashbi said that they should do so. Of course, Rashbi is Rashbi, so they followed his instructions. They go ahead and they arranged this major banquet, a wedding feast. This was getting a divorce feast. And invited friends, the best wines, and at this divorce party, some extra drinking that went on, and in his elated sort of state, and actually, he was actually crying during this party, the husband, but in his emotional state would be a better word to use. In his emotional state, he says to his wife, before we part, I want to gift you. I want to gift you with one. Take that which is most beloved to you. I want you to take. I give it to you as a gift. And the party continues. There's drinking. Rashbi said you should celebrate, so they're following his instructions. And he, of course, becomes, as we say in modern language, I don't know if that word is still used today, he becomes sort of plastered, or he becomes intoxicated. And in the morning, he wakes up, and where does he find himself? He finds himself in the home of his in-laws, on the couch. He looks around, and there, of course, he sees his wife. And he says to his wife, we said this is our final party. I'm going to go back to my home. You're going to go back to your parents. I'll go with my parents, my home, your home, whatever it is. What's going on? And she says to him, you said to me last night that I could take my most beloved thing, one most beloved thing you were gifting me. And I thought about it, and I realized that the most beloved thing in our marriage was you. So I took you back with me. And upon hearing this, they both began to cry and hug each other, etc. And they came back to Rab Shimon Bar Yochai and they said, we decided that we're not getting divorced. We decided that our bond and our love is too great and too deep. And Rab Shimon Bar Yochai blessed them with children. And it seems like, I don't remember the nuances, but it seems like that they were blessed. And this is the story. And I share the story with you because there's an obvious question over here. Why did Rashbi have to, suggest this whole ending, this dramatic ending? Why couldn't he just bless them with children? And one of the explanations given, it was only after they truly recognized and realized how much they appreciate each other, which brought out an even deeper yearning to themselves, not only for themselves, but even more for them to be blessed with children, did the Rashbi, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, feel that he could now bless them with children. Because he felt that now he could sort of tap in or draw down a greater channels, newer channels of blessing from above for them to be blessed with long life and children together, which before he would not have been able to achieve. In other words, a blessing is not like this magic wand. A blessing is a special koach, a special power from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God Almighty. And as other blessings, many times you have to make a vessel. Rain only will fall and be effective when there's a plowed field. And there are various things that we find amongst our sages and later teachings of great tzaddikim, of the righteous men, of what it takes sometimes to make a vessel to be able to draw down those blessings, even in a place or from a place where ordinarily sort of was blocked. And in this case, it is the deeper yearning from below that enabled that blessing to come to be drawn down by Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, by the Rashbi. And that is a similar idea of what happened over here and what the message of Pesach Sheni is. The message of Pesach Sheni, to use the words of Hayom Yom from the previous Rebbe in Yiddish, because some of you I know are Yiddish fans, that the message of Pesach Sheni is that it is never too late. Because you might ask the question, what is this business with a second Pesach? You missed a train, You come to the train station, you missed a train, you're usually late, or this time you were late. There's on a lighter side, there's a story making fun of Yeker Jews. You know what a Yeker is? A Yeker is a German Jew. Now, there was German Jews had a reputation for being very, very punctual. It was called a Yeker. A Yeker was known to be very, very punctual. There's something called Jewish time. In Jewish culture, we know Jewish time means that if an event is called for 8 o'clock, then you're not even meant to show up before 9 o'clock. And that's what's called Jewish time. There is that part of that cultural sort of jesting. I know when I was a kid, there was a moihel, there was someone who did circumcisions, and he had a reliable, consistent habit of showing up an hour late to the bris. And people would literally tell him that the bris was an hour earlier, and they would make sure that nobody would let the moihel know that this is not true, because this is the only way we could get him to show up on time. I remember this by my own nephew's bris, that he managed to show up late regardless. Everybody knew he will find a way to show up late. So there's this story about the Yeker Jew, the German Jew, who were known to be very punctual, that when he went to synagogue on Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret is the last day of the holiday of Sukkot. He told his wife that today I will be home 2 seconds late. 2 sekundes spät. I will arrive home. Why is that? He says because his wife says, why 2 seconds late? He says because today in the prayers, in the Amidah, we switch from Mored Atal, two words, which means God who blesses us with dew, and we switch to Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem, to the one who steers up the winds and causes rain to come down. Instead of two words in the Hebrew, it's four words. So that's why I will be late by 2 seconds. 2 sekundes. So that is, part of sort of Jewish culture, kidding around. But on a serious note, what do you mean you missed Pesach and you're given a second Pesach? You missed. What happens if you miss Shabbat? I missed Shabbat. Could you have Shabbat on Sunday? Could you have Shabbat on Monday? What's going on over here? But here, as mentioned before, because it's something so vital, and even more importantly, it teaches us that it is never too late, that with the right and the proper true initiation from below, a broken heart, a true resolve, tears, true regret, there's always a second chance, always. God has created the world. The Zohar and the Medrash tells us that God created first the world with the attribute of Gvura, which means to be exact. But then he saw that it's not possible for the world to survive in that kind of atmosphere of exact, because there is a plus with a world created with the Midat HaGvura, with exactness. It's perfect. You got to show up. It demands perfection, and there is a virtue to that. And God is perfect. But then he saw that the world cannot survive with that attribute. So shitof ito imo midat harachamim. He went ahead and he mixed into the ingredients the attribute of mercy, the attribute of forgiveness, because it's an absolute necessity. So when we take that initiative and we have that sincere and deep resolve, all of a sudden new channels are opened up, and that's what Pesach Sheni reminds us. So that is the message of the day. It's such an important message of the day. There is never a time where a human being, where we are in a state where it's farfallen, where it's totally lost. We can go ahead and correct our mistakes. We can improve our shortcomings. We could make up that which we have missed. Pesach Sheni gives us the strength and the message that we have the help from Hashem. We have special extra blessings from God to be able to do so. So that's today's lesson. This is true both individually and collectively as a society. We face a time where many might argue that it's a challenging time in terms of the morals and shortcomings of both ourselves and the society around us. But it says nishken farfal. We never say it is too late and it's just gone. I speak to people and they sometimes have that attitude. It's just too long. This country is lost. Society is lost. This community is lost. The situation is lost. Pesach Sheni says it's not true. It's not. We just have to be that candle. We have to light the light that we are and those around us, and that will dispel away the moral and spiritual darkness. Whenever we see tragedy, like sadly in Buffalo, or moral depravity, or whatever it might be, our response, in addition to some of the political response, or whatever that might be, different people, different approaches, but we must have the resolve that it is not too late. We could fix it. We will fix it, individually and collectively. Everybody have a fantastic and wonderful week.